Archer is a very funny show, and it's as funny as it is because of its characters. Since it's a show that just aims to be funny, it makes it slightly more difficult to talk about than the previous shows that I've covered. I'm honestly shocked this list hasn't been covered more on YouTube, and because of that, I hope it makes this video one of my more interesting videos. Archer is the only show I've seen where, despite every character having almost no redeeming features, they are still likeable to the viewers while simultaneously being unlikable arseholes, Archer himself in particular. The reason the characters work so well, and the reason they are the thing that makes this show so amazing, is because, in my opinion, this has the best cast out of any animated show in terms of the voice acting. It also helps that every character is unredeemable instead of just a few. Number 10, Placebo Effect. I was really debating putting this episode on the list. From what I can gather, this is considered the best episode by most fans. I personally didn't find it to be one of the funniest episodes, even though the interrogation scene is one of the funniest moments involving Archer's character. I decided to put this episode on the list because it gives the viewers a good look into Archer's character. This is Archer with cancer trying to get revenge on the people making placebos instead of actual medicine to help his illness. This episode shows us how he reacts to having cancer, which the show never really takes seriously, so I understand if people don't like this episode, but I think it works well because it doesn't take it very seriously, and Archer for the most part never takes things seriously. Number 9, Stage 2. This is probably a little confusing. Part 1 of this small yet connected story is ranked higher than the second part. I find part 1 a little funnier than the second part. This episode has two of my favourite moments in the whole show, being Archer beating the crap out of Brett, and him getting phone calls at the end of the episode from the doctor, telling him he has cancer and it isn't cured like he said it was earlier in the episode, and then he doesn't have it, and then he does one last time. This episode gives a great look into Archer's character like Placebo Effect, but I think this episode is even better as this has Archer reacting to the news of him getting cancer. It actually changes his character quite a bit as he starts to act more positive, which doesn't stick when he thinks he doesn't have cancer. Number 8, the Double Deuce. This episode is basically the Woodhouse backstory episode where he thinks somebody's trying to kill him and his World War I team, since all the deaths in the newspaper were under suspicious circumstances. He thinks somebody is trying to kill him because him and his teammates all took out bets during the war, with the last surviving member getting all of the bet money. There's also a small B-plot with the guys back at ISIS taking out the same bet on who will live the longest. It doesn't really go anywhere, but it does have a few decent laughs in there. In this, we find out Woodhouse is a war hero. There is a scene of him slaughtering many men, which was heroic, badass, and intense. We also get the origin story of how Woodhouse met Mallory, which wasn't necessary but definitely a good addition. Turns out it was all just a misunderstanding, and the newspaper companies just wanted to sell newspapers by putting mysterious circumstances under all of his teammates' deaths. This is a great episode for Woodhouse's character, and a great story-driven episode. I love that the episode ended with Woodhouse yelling at Archer. It was such a deserved moment for his character, especially after learning about all that Woodhouse did to keep Mallory and Sterling safe. I always hoped that we'd see more from his character in the series, and it's a shame we didn't, but George Coe brought a great character to the screen. I love that Adam Reed dedicated most of Season 8 to his character. May George Coe rest in peace. Number 7, Midnight Ron. Ron is another recurring character with very little screen time. I don't like his character nearly as much as Woodhouse, but I did like how he and Archer bonded at least a little in this episode. Ron picks up Archer after Archer burns his passport in a casino, and they have to make their way back home. Ron's car gets shot up after some people start chasing them. They crash, losing the people chasing them, and Ron reveals to Archer that he's been carrying around dirty money. They get picked up by a truck driver only for him to kidnap them. Ron reveals his backstory and how he used to steal cars when he was younger, and how the money is for his buddies that went to prison. The truck driver then takes them to some sort of sex dungeon for a rape snuff film. That's kind of ridiculous and messed up even for an episode of Archer. They manage to escape by train, no thanks to Ron revealing that Archer doesn't have bullets in his gun, and no thanks to Archer throwing away some of Ron's money. I like how Ron yells at Archer about how Archer doesn't want his mother to marry anyone, actually causing Archer to admit he was wrong, something not exactly common in this series. My favourite scenes are that extremely creepy moment Archer discovers the rape snuff film, and Archer calling everyone for help at ISIS, only for them to react progressively more shocked that he actually thought they would help. One moment I didn't like in this episode was when we actually hear Woodhouse eating spiderwebs. I saw the humour in there, but at the same time I just felt too bad for Woodhouse to laugh. And yes, I know we're supposed to be laughing at Archer's reactions and not the actual situation. Other than that very, very minor thing, I felt that this episode was great. Also, Krieger has some sort of reptilian monster, which... definitely something. Number 6, Unxian Tangerine. This episode has a big cute dog, so I'm already biased. It also has an overexcited Archer, which are always highlights for his character. Archer and Lana have to rescue an agent, only for them to discover they're actually rescuing a dog. A big adorable dog, a big adorable neck-ripping out dog. Did I mention that the dog's adorable? In all seriousness though, this episode has quite a lot of action that is only enhanced by a dog with a hatred for guns and fighting. Lana runs away from Archer in the desert, causing Archer and the dog to have to come to her rescue when she gets taken, and of course, they do rescue her. The dog is the highlight of this episode. Through it all, I was hoping it would fight alongside Archer and Lana, and it did, and it was pretty damn good at it too. There was a worry in me saying that the dog would get shot and die, and yes, there is a brief moment they try to make you think the dog died. I really loved the bond between Archer and the dog. Like I mentioned earlier, I love seeing Archer overly excited. H. John Benjamin's voice when he's enthusiastic is great. There's also a subplot with Pam wanting to become a field agent like Lana and Archer. She aces the test and beats up Krieger, Cyril and Ray, and I've got to say, her growling like noises in the fight, if you can even call it a fight, were pretty hilarious. The B-plot doesn't really go anywhere though, and it just ends with an "I'll think about it" moment from Mallory. Lana saying her classic "what" was the perfect moment to end the episode on. Number 5, Double Indecency. A rich man asks the males of the Archer cast to seduce his wife to prove she's cheating. The wife asks the females of the Archer cast to prove that her husband is cheating. Archer bets that Krieger can seduce the wife before Cyril, but Ray bets that Cyril can before Krieger. Lana bets that Pam can seduce the man before Cheryl, and Mallory bets that Cheryl can seduce the man before Pam. While Season 7 was technically linear with an ongoing story, this episode definitely goes away from that and does its own thing. The confidence in all of the characters is hilarious. Whether it's the person betting or the person taking part, they all have a surprising amount of confidence, until some of them suddenly don't anymore. The episode just gets funnier the moment the characters double the bets. Krieger's one of the highlights in this episode with his weird outfit. The best moment in this episode is the fight scene, which is only enhanced by Krieger wearing that weird outfit. I really like how the group defended and insulted Pam. They aren't exactly nice to each other, but the moment someone they don't know insults them, it becomes a big deal. I like that the group has at least loyalty as a common redeeming feature amongst them. That fight scene was pretty epic, showing off all the characters' fighting styles perfectly. Krieger making it look like he was going to help Archer was perfect, and Cheryl getting covered in Vol's blood was also perfect. Just an all-around hilarious episode with a fantastic action scene. Also, Archer has a surprising amount of unfortunate luck when it comes to getting hit with chairs, apparently. Number 4, White Elephant. Archer Vice, upon my first watch, was by far my least favourite season of Archer, and the only one I didn't think was amazing. After rewatching it, I really like it. I know this season has a lot of mixed feelings on it from fans, so if you've only seen it all once and you thought it was only kind of good like I did, then I encourage you to rewatch it all, as it made me appreciate it more. There's no guarantee your opinion will change like mine did, but I'm definitely glad that I gave this a second chance. This is the intro to the season, and even though I wasn't the biggest fan of the season as a whole when I first watched through it, I loved this episode and still do after watching it multiple times. I really like rewatching the season as a whole now, and this episode and the trailer within this episode truly gets me hyped for the rest of the season when I watch it. This episode is a big deal, as this is the episode that changes Archer, killing off characters and the ISIS name, and instead moving on to different things each season after. The interrogation scenes in this episode are all amazing, which is to be expected out of Archer's hilarious cast of characters. This is a great episode to start a great season. I apologise for this pronunciation. Number 3, El Sequestro. It means kidnapping. Pam gets kidnapped after being mistaken for Cheryl. Cheryl's fault, of course. They want Cheryl because she's rich since she owns the railroads. Mallory puts her into protection and Pam and the kidnappers make it to ISIS headquarters, ending in an epic shootout. This is the episode that made me really appreciate Pam's character. She wasn't like modern Pam in Season 1, but Season 2 is what really started making her great. She's now the tough, gossipy, and easily excitable member of the group, who gets away with saying a lot of offensive things, but the entire group gets away with that. This episode also develops Cheryl's character. Although she had always been the more bitchy, dumb member of the group, they just advanced that more. The whole episode is just a bunch of fun. Cheryl getting Pam kidnapped, Pam calling the kidnappers pussies when they hit her, Cyril calling ISIS pretending to be the kidnappers to get the money Cheryl owes him back, and then he is forced to pretend like he is on a sex hotline in front of Archer while still talking to Mallory. That's one of my favourite Cyril scenes, by the way. Just how he starts talking dirty over the phone to Mallory and then suddenly says he's done masturbating because Archer shows up. The horror in Mallory's voice and face as she thinks it's the kidnappers is fantastic. That Cyril phone call, Pam calling the kidnappers pussies, and Mallory saying how much Pam is worth to the kidnappers compared to Cheryl are my favourite moments. Plus, Pam getting her revenge on Mallory for not caring or offering more money. Screw it, this whole episode is pretty much perfect. I could name every scene in this as a near flawless moment, which just shows how good the next 2 episodes are. I apologise for the pronunciation of this episode too. Number 2, Lo Scandalo. Mallory has a dead body in her house. But how did the man die? It's Mallory. Yeah, there was never a doubt in my mind that it was Mallory that killed the Italian Prime Minister at any point in this episode. I assume she shot herself in the arm to make the line more believable. Despite me being pretty sure that it was Mallory all the way through, it's how the characters reacted to the situation that makes this a nearly flawless episode. Honestly, it didn't matter that I assumed it was Mallory, because I didn't know her motive, and that was the big reveal for me, and I loved it. We get the reveal that Mallory killed the man because he may have been responsible for Sterling's father's death. That is such a perfect ending. The way Archer figures out there was Mallory and not a break-in was amazing, and I love how he and Lana chose not to question her motives after the puzzle pieces came together. Story-wise, for a single episode, this is easily the best story out of any episode of Archer, but it's also incredibly strong when it comes to the humour. The fake dinner scene is probably in my top 5 moments in the whole series, and is almost definitely my favourite Cheryl moment. That accent she puts on is so over the top, and I think it's only made funnier by the fact that she isn't the first to put on an accent, so at first it seems like she might be somewhat believable like the others around her, but nope, it's Cheryl being Cheryl and I love it. Being an episode that revolves around the disposal of a body, this episode has a darker tone than most Archer episodes, but it works well because there are so many great moments. Other than the dinner scene, a moment/moments that always makes me laugh are Mallory paying the super with a potato, and her saying he probably made the fake call to the police, while we know in fact that that was Mallory. Before I move on to the single honourable mention this time, and I know it's weird for me to mention it here, at the end of its segment, but the opening to this episode set a really dark atmosphere, with Mallory sat on the chair with lightning outside her house, and it was great. Honourable mention, Season 8. I thought this entire season was fantastic, but since it's all so well connected, it's too difficult to pick an individual episode from this season. It feels like it could be watched as a movie, but it still definitely deserved a slot as an honourable mention this time around. I didn't want to pretend like an entire season was a single episode, but if I did include it as one huge episode, it would likely make it to the 10 to 6 part of this list. Number 1, Vision Quest. The characters aren't ones that get along extremely well. Sure, I guess they're friends, but they don't exactly get along. The majority of my favourite moments in this show stem from most of the main cast being in a single room as each other. This whole episode is everyone but Mallory in a single space as each other, that being an elevator. The elevator, being a confined space, shows us the characters at their worst, and that's usually also their funniest. I do think that this is the funniest episode in the series. The limited space means it's talking, and more talking, which means every character gets a chance to shine. Hell, even Mallory at the very end gives us a great ending. Even toast-making Milton gets a moment. It isn't special or anything, but he's in there. The characters are so well developed at this point in the series that we kind of know what they're thinking. Cheryl lists what all of the characters are thinking and wanting to do, and that shows that not only do we, the audience, know these characters very well, but even the dumbest member of their group understands them really well. This is a bottle episode, yet despite that, I think the animation is surprisingly good. It's extremely noticeable in this episode that there is a large variety of camera angles used compared to a normal episode. Every character is at their best in this episode, with the exception of Mallory, whom gets too little screen time, but her lack of screen time is important to the ending. I love Archer's elevator call, Lana's reactions to the whole thing, Cyril's elevator hobby/interest, Cheryl and her knowledge of the others, Pam using her pants to clean up her pee, Ray calling the police and getting mistaken for a woman, and Krieger not saying what is in his container, and feeling horrified when asked if it is edible. Those aren't necessarily the funniest moments, but they are the most memorable for each character. But second best of all is the ending, with Mallory witnessing the elevator opening, showing us all of the characters killing each other, and Cyril masturbating in the corner. And yes, I said second best because the very best part of this episode is the ending, with Mallory revealing that the team building exercise wasn't the elevator, and was just in fact Mallory wanting the group to watch the movie Vision Quest. I could probably talk about this episode for an hour. I think this is Archer at its best. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to write your favourite episodes in the comments. Thank you all for 100 subscribers. As of when this is being recorded, I'm actually at 106. Some of my subscribers I do know in person, but the vast majority of them I don't. I'd say at most 10 subscribers are people I know, but only like 3 of them are actually people who watch my stuff. I know 100 subscribers isn't exactly many by YouTube standards, but that's still 100 people, which I know to me is a lot to think about, especially if you imagine 100 people in a single room. So once again, thanks to all of you for subscribing, and hopefully I'll make it to 500 soon enough, which is my next big milestone for my channel. See you next time. So, bye I guess.